And we are very privileged today to be joined by Jimmy Dore, of course, in the Jimmy Dore Show. You can follow him on Twitter, Jimmy, Jimmy _Dore, Dore, and the Jimmy Dore Show on Rumble. His book, of course, he's had many Comedy Central specials, but his book is Your Country is Just Not That Into You. I had the privilege of doing the Jimmy Dore Show yesterday, and he says some provocative things, including that we are ruled by psychopaths. And that was in response to some of the excesses of the mRNA vaccine distribution. A reminder that tomorrow we have Alex Berenson, and on Thursday we have Zuby coming in, normal times. Rob Henderson, Tessie Laura, Brett Weinstein coming in on March 5th, Dave Rubin, March 6th. A lot of stuff coming up, even Adam Carolla coming in a little bit later. So let's get some business done here. Please pay attention and support the people that support us, and we'll bring in Jimmy Dore.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Valentine's Day is around the corner, so it is time to look your absolute best. Our friends at Genusale are celebrating Valentine's Day with a special gift just for you. From now until Valentine's Day, get a limited time gift of beauty box free with your order at Genusale.com/Drew. Each beauty box has 2 of Genusale's top sellers for you to give a try. It's absolutely free. And right now, save over 60% off all of our favorite Genusale products with one of our customized skincare packages.
I know I'm a snob about the products I use on my face. Everybody knows it. Every time I go to the dermatologist's office, they're just rows and rows of different creams. Retinols, vitamin C cream, under eye cream, night creams.
Scrubs.
And then when I get to the counter, they're overpriced. All kinds of products that you can all find at Genusale.com.
Plus, with its immediate effects, Genusale promises results that will make you smile. It's guaranteed or 100% of your money back. To let yourself and a loved one with our limited edition bundles right now at Genusale.com/Drew. Use our special code Drew at checkout for extra savings off your order today. And remember, every order placed is automatically upgraded to free shipping. Don't wait. That is Genusale.com/Drew, GENUCEL.com/DREW. We all know the value of a good night's sleep. We feel better, look better, have more energy to spare, but you could be missing out on all of those benefits if you're sleeping on sheets that are too hot or too cold or just plain uncomfortable. I have the solution. Cozy Earth bedding. Cozy Earth is the softest and most comfortable sheets, blankets, loungewear, and more. They use premium viscose from highly sustainable bamboo, and we sleep in them regularly. I wear their t-shirts. Susan wears their pajamas. Cozy Earth bedding comes with a 100-night sleep trial, which means you have up to 100 nights to sleep on them, wash them, try them out. If you're not in love, just return them within 100 days for a full refund. Susan and I love them. In fact, we have Cozy Earth sheets on our bed right now, and they made a huge difference in our sleep. If you've never tried Cozy Earth, we have some awesome news. You can save up to 35% off Cozy Earth right now. But hurry, this offer will not last. Go to CozyEarth.com, enter my promo code Drew at checkout for up to 35% off on your first order. That is CozyEarth.com, promo code Drew, CozyEarth, CozyEarth.com, code DREW.
And I love their pajamas.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, I like them too on you. As a matter of fact, those are really nice. Those gray ones.
But their sheets are amazing.
Yes, we sleep on them. Like last night, we were on them again. Jimmy _Dore on X. Rumble is the Jimmy Dore Story. Jimmy Dore Show, DORE. You can find him anywhere. I mean, let's face it. The book, of course, Your Country is Not Just That Into You. And recently, he wrote some revelations on the lipid nanoparticles for the mRNA vaccines, stating, quote, "We've been poisoned and lied to on a scale most people's brains cannot comprehend." I want to talk to him about that. And I also want to talk to him about his evolution in comedy and as a purveyor of wisdom and truth. Please welcome Jimmy Dore.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. It's really exciting. And nice to meet another fellow suit jacket wearer.
We are in that camp together now. Thank you. I appreciate that. Your imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. I appreciate it. So if you don't mind, I want to start out by talking about you, your life, your career, for people that may not have heard this story. And sort of, I always ask comedians when the comedy hit. When did it? Usually, most comedians have like a moment where they went, "Oh, I could make a living doing this," or "Oh, or they have some experience in front of an audience where they get the first real serious laugh and they get kind of addicted to it. But they can always, at least most comedians, kind of point at a moment. Is that you?
Yes. For me, it was when I was in college and they got cable into our dorm room. This is back in the 80s. And so they had all these new stand-up comedy shows that appeared out of nowhere. Even A&E's Evening at the Improv, Stand-Up Spotlight, just all kinds. There was like at least a dozen that were on cable TV.
Yeah.
And I would often, when I would watch sitcoms, I would rewrite the punchlines. And I was like, oh, that should be this way. They inverted the punchline there. If they put that word there, it'd be funnier. And I didn't really even realize what I was doing. And then when I would go to comedy clubs and those guys were funny, man. Like I always saw really funny people. I would go to Zanies in Chicago. And I was like, boy, I could be funny for 5 minutes at a party, but those guys are funny for a half hour at a clip. I can't do that. But then television, like I said, all those shows started to pop up on cable television with stand-ups. And I was like, well, I'm funnier than that guy, and he's on television. Like, I might not be able to do it at Zanies, but I could do it on TV. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. And so
that's interesting.
It was kind of good comedy got me interested in comedy, and bad comedy gave me the courage to do it. And so that's what got me started.
It's fantastic. What were you studying in college?
So I really wasn't studying much. I wasn't a good student. And I went to Illinois State. And then I dropped out after 3 years. I was studying communications. I was mostly into politics. I ran for the academic senate. I got elected. And I was really interested in politics for some reason. And so I dropped out. And then I started driving a forklift, where I was like, hey, I'm sick and tired of being broke all the time. So I dropped out of college. I got a job driving a forklift. And after the first day, I got out the college catalog. I was like, I better go back to college. And I went to Columbia College in Chicago because they took all my credits. So whichever college took all my credits, I was gonna go. And so that's where I went. But that was kind of an arts college. So I learned that I had a talent for copywriting. I was going to go into advertising, copywriting, and because of that school. And that back then it was just like, kind of an obscure arts, kind of arty kind of school. It was taught by working professionals. People inside the business would come teach you things. And now it's like $40,000 a year, and it's a big deal in Chicago. But anyway, back then it was just regular. So I did that, and I graduated, and then I started doing open mics as soon as I graduated from college. And back then, that was 1989. They started paying you to do comedy right away. It was the comedy boom, right? So if you could stand on stage for 15 minutes, you could get paid, and I did. And so I was like, I'm never getting a job. I could do this. I couldn't believe it. And I remember the first time I got a paid gig out on the road. I went to Milwaukee and at the Comedy Cafe, and I worked Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I had so much fun, I forgot to get paid. And that never happened at my regular job, which was doing masonry. And so I was like, boy, this has got to be it. I couldn't think of a better job in my life than to do that. So that's what got me started. And that was in 1989. And then I moved to Los Angeles in 1995, and I started getting on TV right away. I got on NBC like 5 or 6 times in the first couple of years, which was a big deal. And then I got my own Comedy Central special in 2003. I got an hour special in 2008. I got a radio show out here on KPFK I had for about 12 years. And the rest is history. I wrote that book. I got another special on Hulu. And now my current special is called COVID Lies Are Funny, which is available at jimmydore.com.
Perfect. And then in terms of how you evolved from, I'm guessing your working class experience had something to do with your political evolution from a sort of Bernie liberal to, I'm not sure how to characterize you now, frankly. Talk to us, there's a big story there too. Talk to us about that evolution.
Well, I always considered myself a Democrat, right? Because Democrats used to be the party of the working class, and then Bill Clinton came along, and he was it was right after Ronald Reagan, and so he decided, well, if you can't beat him, join him. So he became just like the Republicans. So that's why we have two right wing parties now in America, and nobody represents the working class, which is why Donald Trump happened. People like to say Jill Stein made it happen because Jill Stein's the kingmaker. And people like to say, I saw today on Twitter, so today somebody said it was Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart, I guess, criticized Joe Biden, I guess, on his first night back. And people are like, this is what gave us Trump. I'm like, no, what gave us Trump is that both political parties abandoned the working class. And that's what they both got in bed with corporations, Wall Street, the military industrial complex, big oil, and big pharma. And nobody represents workers anymore. And that's why people are desperate, and they were willing to take a chance on Donald Trump, which, I interviewed a Waffle House cook from Virginia in 2016 who voted for Donald Trump. And I was like, come on, Donald, you think Donald Trump cares about workers? And he said to me, he goes, Jimmy, we know Donald Trump's a loudmouth Yankee who should have had his ass kicked a long time ago. But he is actually promising us something where Hillary Clinton was promising to take our jobs away because she wanted to close down all the coal mines. And he's like, so at least he promised us to do something. So we voted for that. And so you can't go against that. And so then, of course, I was a Bernie Sanders fan back then because I'm for Medicare for all. I was for minimum wage. I was for free college. I still am for all that stuff, right? But they all shifted. The Democrats all shifted to the right, including Bernie Sanders. They cheated him. Donna Brazile admitted that they cheated him in her book. Elizabeth Warren admitted it on CNN. They, of course, cheated him. And what Bernie Sanders didn't make them pay a price for that, because my personal theory is they threatened to prosecute his wife for her financial shenanigans that she committed when she was working at that college. That's my theory. I don't have anything to back it up, so you can dismiss it. But I've never seen anybody roll over like that before. He used to start every speech in 2016. Sounds like you're ready for a revolution. And then he went from that to backing the war machine, becoming a war pig, pro-Ukraine war, which is nothing but a money funneling operation that's an upward transfer of wealth to the international security state, the military industrial complex that was provoked by NATO. The world's terrorists are the United States. And people don't realize that. There's no other country that has 1,000 military bases around the world. We do. And the joke we make at our show is we show the map and we show all the military bases that are surrounding Iran or they have 50 military bases surrounding China since the Korean War. And I say, how dare they put their country so close to all our military bases? Right now, we keep getting upset. What Joe Biden is doing retaliatory strikes because people are attacking our soldiers in the Middle East. Why are our soldiers? They're attacking our soldiers in their countries. We're occupying Syria, a third of Syria right now. As we point our finger and say Putin is a thug for invading Ukraine, we are the country next to it, Syria. We've been occupying it since, 2020 at least, a third of it. Which third do you think that is? It's the third that has the oil. And when they asked Donald Trump why is he leaving troops in Syria, he said it's for the oil. And he gave the game away, which is why the donor class hates Donald Trump so much. If you listen to CNN, they'll tell you they hate Donald Trump because he's a liar. If you think the establishment hates a politician because he went to Washington, D.C. and lied, I've got a vaccine I'd like to sell you. The reason they really hate Donald Trump is because he would accidentally tell truths like that, which the entire world got to see the president of the United States look into a camera and give the game away of what our foreign policy has been for the last 50 years. We invade smaller countries that aren't as powerful, and we steal their natural resources, and we give it to Western corporations. That's exactly what the game has been. And anyway, that's been my evolution. And once I saw Russiagate happen, I knew it was bogus, right? And so I brought on Bill Binney, who was the #1 NSA codebreaker for decades. And he showed forensically how it could not have been Russia that did that, and that this was all a concocted story. Well, now it's come out that we know that it was concocted. The P dossier, which was the Steele dossier, which was funded by the Clinton campaign, and they lied about funding it for an entire year to the FBI. I don't know why, because the FBI was in cahoots with them, because the FBI lied to the FISA court 17 times so they can get those phone taps on Donald Trump's organization, and they still couldn't come up with a crime. So I'm not a Donald Trump fan. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. Like I said, I've always considered myself to be a liberal and a lefty. But what happened to the liberals is they became right-wing authoritarians, and especially around COVID. So when I saw through Russiagate and I could see the hoax that the corporate media can play, and along with the two political organizations. Because remember, the people inside the Republican Party, the establishment, also hated Donald Trump, right? It's the donor class. They run, Ralph Nader said the only difference between a Democrat and a Republican is the speed at which their knee hits the floor when a donor enters the room. So that sounds like a risque joke. But anyway, that's a quote from Ralph Nader. So,
Didn't say both knees, said one knee. Bend the
one
knee.
knee. Yeah. So that is where I'm at politically. And so during COVID, the establishment that also pulled the hoax called Russiagate, and did the Syrian war, did the Ukraine war. They've lied about every war in my lifetime, by the way. They lied about Vietnam through 4 different presidents. They lied about Iraq twice. They lied about Syria. They lied about Yemen. They lied about Somalia. They lied about Afghanistan for 20 years, if you read the Afghanistan. But I know when it comes to Ukraine, I just think they're telling the truth. Anyway, so so once I saw all the hoaxes and lies that they can pull, and then COVID happened, and then they did a lockdown. They did what they call they really did a controlled demolition of our economy, which squashed workers and everybody except a handful of millionaires and billionaires, based on no science whatsoever. And they want me to be angry at my neighbor for the economic pain I'm feeling because of that, because my neighbor wouldn't take a vaccine that didn't work the way they said it did in the first place. Well, I'm not going to hate my neighbor. My neighbor is not my enemy. My enemy is the oligarchy. I'm going to love my neighbor and join with my neighbor because he's hurting just like I am, and we share a common enemy. That enemy is the international billionaire oligarchy, the WEF, the WHO, and the Wall Street. That is exactly who we're fighting against in the military-industrial complex. They'll send $100 billion to the most corrupt country in Europe at the blink of an eye before they'll send a nickel to help people in the United States. And that's all by design. It's by the design is to keep us all on edge and to keep us all begging for authoritarian solutions to our problems. That's why that's my theory anyway. That's why the border's wide open. I used to, I don't demonize immigrants. If I was an immigrant, I would want to come to the United States too. What I demonize is the billionaire class that creates those people to be desperate through our drug wars and through our other wars, and also which doesn't seal the border. That's intentional. And so they're shipping them to cities to create chaos. Chaos always favors the establishment. If there's a civil war in this country, it's because the billionaire class wants it, because chaos always favors the establishment. And then they can do more authoritarian lockdowns, just like 9/11. So they had the Patriot Act on the shelf before 9/11 ever happened. People don't know that either, right? And by the way, once they take away your rights, you're never getting them back. So we didn't get them back. And then Barack Obama repealed habeas corpus. That actually happened in the NDAA in 2011, Section 1021. They repealed habeas corpus, right? So I don't know if you know what that means, but it means the Ned can now put you in jail and in indefinite detention. That's a new thing we use. That's a new term. So all they have to do is say you're a terrorist, and they can put you in jail without trial forever. So they repealed habeas corpus. Barack Obama did that. Now, habeas corpus was in the Magna Carta.
Hang on, Jimmy, 1 second. He repealed it globally, or he looked through it in order to. But he looked through it in order to keep people down in Guantanamo.
Well, they also used it. All they have to do is call you a terrorist, and if they say you're a terrorist, they don't have to give you a trial.
I mean, Lincoln repealed it. Lincoln actually repealed it, right? It was repealed during the Civil War for a bit of time.
But it was reinstated. So now we're operating on a liberty view from somewhere around the 1100s. So just keep that in mind, right? As we're bringing democracy to the rest of the world. We don't have democracy. And that's another thing that kind of cracks me up. And if I'm talking too much, just let me know. But I just think it's funny.
No.
When I have people tell me, I have friends of mine who watch the corporate news and they think it's real, that it's sponsored by the mill. Why do you think Boeing sponsors the news? Are you in the market for a jet? Why do you think Big Pharma sponsors the news? They do that because they don't want them investigating those people. They used to get advertisers' money so journalists could go do investigations. But now they get advertising money from the people they're supposed to be investigating. And so they're funding not their investigation, but they're funding their non-investigation, which is why you never see anybody investigate Big Pharma. You never see anybody investigate. You're never going to hear the truth. And that's why Tucker Carlson got fired from Fox News, not because he was lying. He used to lie a lot in his early career. It's when he started telling the truth. And the final straw was when he brought on RFK Jr. to tell the truth about Big Pharma, and they fired his ass that week. So people need to understand that if just the book Manufacturing Consent by Ed Herman and Noam Chomsky was written before Bill Clinton, who was no friend of the working class, took us from 50 giant media companies down to 6. And now journalists, instead of coming from backgrounds like mine, my dad was a cop and a Mason, and I grew up a bricklayer and a Mason, and come a blue-collar neighborhood. Those used to be where journalists came from. Now journalists come from Ivy League schools like Harvard, Columbia, and Northwestern, and they all come from the upper class, and they're all class loyal. The guy who they hired at the Washington Post, who hired him? Jeff Bezos, one of the richest guys in the world, hired a guy to cover the progressive politics in America during Bernie Sanders' run. And who did he hire? He hired Dave Weigel. Who was Dave Weigel? He came from Northwestern University, an elite university, and he used to organize pro-Iraq war rallies on campus while he was the head of the newspaper at Northwestern. So that's the people you're getting your news from. People need to realize that they're not getting their news from normal journalists. They're getting their news from class-loyal, upper-crusted servants to the billionaire class. And that's why they just had to fire tens of thousands of journalists, and they're all lamenting it. Taylor Lorenz did a TikTok that I showed on my show where she said, "Oh my God, they're firing everybody at the LA Times, even Sports Illustrated." And she said, "I don't think people know what the world's going to look like without journalists. I know what the world's going to look like without journalists like Taylor Lorenz and Dave Weigel. Every morning, a little bluebird is going to come land on my shoulder, and we're all going to break out into song. That's what the world's going to look like, because we don't need that."
Well, let me stop you on journalists. I want to stop you on journalists because I had this conversation with James O'Keefe just Monday, and he was saying the same thing. And he says that's why he has to do his muckraking, and that's why he has to use the techniques he uses, is because they're liars and they're lying, and therefore he's justified in using sort of uncomfortable techniques and going at them. The question I keep asking people these days is, what do we even mean when we say journalist? Do you know what a journalist is? Should there be professional standards? Should there be licensing? Is there a reason Tucker Carlson's not a journalist? I don't think I'm a journalist, but maybe I am. Couldn't an average person function like a journalist? I don't know what it is anymore.
Here's what journalism is. This is what journalism is: peeking your head down the street and reporting back what you see. That's what journalism is. And anybody could be a journalist because that's what it is. They don't want you to think that's what it is. They want you to think it's some kind of special class of person, because if anybody could do it, then everybody has a voice. And that's the last thing they want. So yes, you do journalism.
Did this take it away? Did this thing take it away? The phone, the fact that we have Twitter Spaces, and the fact that we can take pictures of everything, wherever we want. Where's my phone? There.
It certainly helps. It certainly helps turn everybody into a journalist, doesn't it? And by the way, when you gave my introduction, you could say you can see me everywhere. You can see me everywhere except TikTok. I got kicked off TikTok finally. And that's because TikTok is the most subservient to the security state, meaning the FBI and the CIA. And they do whatever they say because they don't want to lose their market share in the United States. They're not, anyway, so that's just another story. But anyway.
And didn't you have
We got in trouble on TikTok, and I refused to go on there. I mean, I might look at my friends, but we
Susan
don't post
is very concerned about
I think it's China.
Right. She's very concerned about the Chinese Communist Party controlling things. She figures that it's their business, so therefore they're involved with this. But you had an actual run-in with the FBI, didn't you, Jimmy?
I don't know. I don't remember me having a run-in.
I thought you told me that they showed up. Maybe it was Jimmy Dore that was telling me that. I mean, sorry, James O'Keefe, that somebody actually showed up and investigated you because I guess it was O'Keefe that had that happen to him. Yeah. And he was saying that was where his sort of shift came, where he started not trusting the government and start worrying about the overreach of the intelligence community and whatnot. And certainly I feel like the Twitter files have opened most eyes to the excesses, and yet they keep going on. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I hope you're right about that. It's opened people's eyes, because I don't think it did. I think people so what they're told in the corporate media is to dismiss it as Elon Musk and some right-wing kind of charade or some kind of scam that the right-wingers who are the and the anti-vaxxers, and they don't. So nobody actually really. And I was wishing more people would look into Matt type, because you saw what the Democrats did so they always pretend that Donald Trump was the enemy of journalists. So of course, what every accusation they make about Donald Trump is a confession. And because that's what they're doing. It's called projection.
It's a projection.
And if you,
projection, yeah. A friend of mine, I saw a psychoanalyst on an interview just the other day saying, whenever you hear a narcissist say, you are, what you should hear is, I am. They always project. You are fill in the blank, but they really feel the reality is, I am.
And so if you watch those congressional hearings with the Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi, it is disgraceful what happened. Yeah. And I'm like that. Those are so now you know why people vote for Donald Trump, because both parties are completely bought. So I try to tell people. I go, we're run by a cabal of billionaires. They're like, oh, Jimmy, really? What kind of meetings do they have? I'll tell you the meetings they have. The meeting they have is called a session of Congress. When there's a session of Congress, do you think those people are in there doing the bidding of workers and the elderly and the sick and the students? No, they're there doing the biddings of the donor class, which is why our country is the way it is. It's not because of Russia, a country that has a smaller GDP than California. The way our country looks the way it is because the billionaire class wants it designed like that, because they're doing the bidding of the billionaire class. They can print $5 trillion during COVID, not one penny of it to go to try to fix homelessness or give people free college or health care or any of that. And all went right up to the 1,000 richest people in this country. We're ruled by criminals. So I was going to tell you before, I have a friend of mine who says, Jimmy, I'll go along with a lot of the shit you say, which actually sounds like he wouldn't. But he says, I'm sorry, January 6th, that undermined our democracy. And I said, that's what you think did it? You're adorable. We don't live in a democracy. We live in an oligarchy, which was proven by a Princeton study over 10 years ago. Your country and democracy was stolen by corporations at least 50 years ago. And the reason our country looks like this is we've been ruled by corporate criminals since 1980, at least. That's why your country looks like this. And that's why we're ruled by octogenarians and older, because the corporation has made their investment in these people and they don't want to let go of them. So they're going to keep funding them so they can get reelected until they're in the grave, literally, which is what happened with Dianne Feinstein here, and what's certainly happening with Joe Biden. Joe Biden, there is no bigger friend to Wall Street, the credit card industry. The reason why students can't get their student loans expunged in bankruptcy court is because of Joe Biden. The reason why prisons are overflowing with black and brown people isn't because of Donald Trump. It's because of Joe Biden, which I had to teach that to Cornel West when he came on my show, which is what a sad, sad state of affairs when Cornel West preaches about fascism and fighting for the working man, and the time came for him to do it, and he didn't do it. The time came during COVID, and all he could do was call his neighbor a fascist, neo-fascist, white supremacy this, white supremacy that. The time came to stand up for workers, and 70,000 workers got fired in one state alone because they wouldn't take an experimental medical treatment, and he didn't say a word about it. 41% of black-owned businesses went out of business during COVID, and he didn't say a word about it. So when the time came for people to stand up against fascism, authoritarianism, censorship, they didn't. The people I used to look up to and rely on didn't do it. They failed. And so it fell on the shoulders of people like me, people like you, people like Joe Rogan, Russell Brand. These are the only people, and that's why they have to criminalize, discredit, slander, and smear people like us. That's why you're demonetized on YouTube. That's what they did to Russell Brand. That's what they've been trying to do to me. So if you don't get in trouble in journalism for lying. For lying, Rachel Maddow told crazy lies about Russia running Donald Trump and our president is a traitor to our country. They were all made up out of whole cloth, and she got what was her punishment for that, for lying about that? Also lying about the vaccine, by the way. What was her punishment? Her punishment was she got a $35 million contract. You know how much that is, Dr. Drew? That's $100,000 a day. Rachel Maddow makes $100,000 a day, and people think she's telling the truth because she's a homosexual, and homosexuals don't lie. Well, I don't know if you ever heard about J. Edgar Hoover. But anyway, my whole point is these people are psychopath criminals, and that's why they have Chris Hayes also at MSNBC, because, oh my God, a nerd wouldn't lie to us. He's a nerd. Nerds don't lie. Of course they do. And so these are the exact people they would try to put in those positions, and they're there to manufacture consent. That's the point I was going to before. Noam Chomsky proved it. Before we had 50 giant media companies, now we only have 6. Even before that, they were there doing the bidding of the billionaire class that owns the media to manufacture consent for whatever is the policy they want. The Princeton study proved 10 years ago that in the United States, if you make in the lower 80% of wage earners in the country, legislation never reflects what you want. If you're in the upper 10% of the wealthy in America, and if you want, and 50% of the wealthy want something, 50% of the time it gets implemented. It's a correlation like that. So that's the definition. We're in an oligarchy, an authoritarian oligarchy that owns the media. We're the most propagandized people in the world, and we think it happened to somebody else. We think Russia or China are more propagandized to me. You know, if you're in China, they know when they see propaganda. They know the government's lying to them. In America, they really think when they turn on Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC, or read the New York Times or Jeff Bezos' Washington Post, that they're getting news. They're not getting news. They're getting 100% propaganda that is there to manufacture consent for whatever the billionaire class wants.
Yeah, I got to say, I've only recently come to understand that I can't believe anything that's in the press. It's just, God help you if you are the object of a story. You see how far from the truth they go. And just because it's about you, that's not the exception for how they divert from fact, divert from the truth. They're always doing that. And it's Gelman amnesia, that's called, that you sort of think that they don't know your area of interest or your particular personal story. But of course, they would understand world politics, which is that much more complicated. I have to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to dig a little bit into the words psychopathic and authoritarian, which I've heard you say a few times today. And Jimmy Dore, everybody, you can follow him, follow the Jimmy Dore show, watch the Jimmy Dore show, get on his Rumble channel, subscribe, and we'll be right back after this. Are you one of the millions of American women and men dealing with premature hair thinning and hair loss? Or maybe you're scared about inheriting that thinning look because it runs in your family? Start 2024 with a real solution that delivers results without the harsh side effects or unwanted chemicals and no need for prescription. Prova uses a safe natural ingredient, Procapil, to effectively target the three main causes of premature hair thinning and hair loss. By supporting healthy scalp circulation, the delivery of nourishing nutrients, and healthy hair follicle anchoring to your scalp, Prova guarantees more hair on your head than in the shower or on your comb. Right now, new customers save over 50% plus free shipping. Every introductory package includes a full 60-day supply of Prova serum for daily use, plus the Prova Super Concentrate for faster, more noticeable results. Don't wait. Order now to save an extra 10% and get free shipping at proviahair.com/Drew. That's PROVIAHAIR, proviahair.com/DREW. As a physician, I am deeply concerned about efforts to erode the doctor-patient relationship. And as medical freedom continues to come under assault, I'm on a mission to empower you to be able to take care of yourselves and your family the way you want to. I urge you to get this medical emergency kit from the Wellness Company. It contains essential prescription medication you should really always have on hand. Here's Dr. Peter McCullough, Chief Scientific Officer.
It's a very broad and diverse medical kit, can handle everything from a urinary tract infection, a fungal infection, a bronchitis. People can, via telemedicine, get their questions answered and get on the right track. But it's basically an at-home formula. Yep. For the first time, people, instead of being held captive by an urgent care or by a doctor's office or an ER, they can actually do this themselves at home.
Save yourself the wait and the hassle and feel better faster. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off. That is drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off the medical emergency kit. Jimmy Dore is my guest. The Jimmy Dore Show is where you can find him.
Can I ask a question about the wellness kit?
Sure.
The Wellness Company?
Yeah, go ahead. I also want to give you a chance to ask Jimmy about the Putin interview, which is on your mind. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good one. I was talking to my lash lady, and her boyfriend has an ear infection, and I was telling him about the Wellness Company and how when you have an emergency kit, you can just have these antibiotics on hand, and you don't have to go to the emergency room, right? Or the urgent care.
Correct.
And because right now there's this virus going around where you get horrible chest and ear and nose and everything. It's worse than COVID. I've had it for a month.
Okay. So viruses don't respond to any antibiotics.
Right, but he's had it for a week and then he's now getting an ear ache.
It's not virus. It is mycoplasma that's been going around. That responds to azithromycin, with Z-Pak. And if you get a secondary infection, like an ear gets occluded and bacteria gets in there and sets up, or you get a bacterial bronchitis following a viral infection, then antibiotics have some utility. Okay.
Well, what about the Z-Pak?
That's what I'm saying. But you don't just, if it is a virus, which most of these things are, you'll get better in a week.
What about the inhalers? Do they put that in there in the emergency kit?
But we're thinking about putting some inhalers and some other stuff. So, yeah, I talked to Mark Garagos about that this morning. He was all about it. There's Jimmy Dore. And Jimmy, I think my wife has a question. Go ahead.
But I've been what I've been recommended to do when I can counter a virus like that is I take zinc, I take elderberry, I take one of those airborne things, and I also get my vitamin D3 up. So a lot of people don't realize, people get cold and flus in the winter. I've read studies that said that it's not because of anything else except that people get less vitamin D in the winter because they get less sunlight. So if you keep your vitamin D up, especially vitamin D3, that would help you a lot. Most of the people that were hospitalized from COVID had low vitamin D3.
And we sell that at the wellness company, drdrew.com/TWC, because they have all the elderberry and the zinc and the Zelenko products, that you should take anyways. You're right.
There's a Zelenko product that's available. But again, that's all great. Those are all good things to do. But the point is, antibiotics per se are for bacteria. And antivirals is for that stuff.
Well, I went about a week and it was just not going away.
You had mycoplasma, which is a bacterial type infection.
So do the doctors over there tell you this, like when you have the telemedicine?
There's a kit in there, and the telemedicine can straighten that out too. You're laughing, Jimmy. What's going on?
No, I haven't had to call the wellness company, but I'm just curious how it works.
What's up, Jimmy?
Your interaction with your wife I love it. It's adorable.
And she in addition to her being completely paranoid about the CCP, she's got questions about Putin too.
Yeah, I want to know what you thought about Tucker's interview and how much was propaganda and how much was actual reality.
So what people don't realize about first of all, I thought it was great. I thought finally somebody's interviewing that person. And of course, the mainstream media had, again, slandered Tucker Carlson for doing journalism, right? And that's exactly what he did. Of course, he should be. I mean, when I was a kid, Mike Wallace, the good Wallace, interviewed Ayatollah Khomeini during the Iran hostage. They all do that. Right?
Castro was interviewed. All kinds of horrible leaders were interviewed. That's what we did. That's what journalism used to be.
That's called journalism. So what people don't know about the Ukraine war is that it was 100% provoked by NATO and the West and the United States, and that they already had 3 peace plans already, and the United States and NATO squashed them. So in 2014, there was a coup. It was called the Maidan coup. And what happened was the CIA got in bed with literal Nazis in Ukraine to overthrow their democratically elected government. So then the people in the eastern part of Ukraine, called the Donbass, didn't want to go along with that coup government. And so the new coup government started literally shelling the people who lived in the Donbass, like what they're doing to Gaza today, started shelling them. And so they came up with a peace accord called the Minsk Peace Accord. They had 2 of those. Now, it was revealed by, I think it was Angela Merkel revealed that they never intended to abide by the Minsk Accords. All that was to buy them time so they could build up the Ukraine army so they could provoke Putin into invading, so then they would have an army to fight him off when he did it. And how did they provoke him? Well, they threatened to put Ukraine into NATO, even though they had promised when the Iron Curtain fell that wouldn't happen. We wouldn't advance NATO 1 inch. Of course they did. That now there's like 10 or 12 more countries that are in NATO, and we did this. And right before Putin invaded, Putin didn't invade to start a war. He invaded to stop a war. And so the people who broke those Minsk peace accords was Ukraine and the NATO. It wasn't Putin in Russia. And so they ramped up, they doubled their shelling of the Donbass in order to provoke Putin to do something like that. And so he's right when he said, I didn't invade to start a war, I invaded to stop a war. And also to make sure to denazify Ukraine. And so if you know anything about the actual history, they'll never tell you this, nor will Jon Stewart, right, who I used to be a hero of mine. But Jon Stewart hung a medal on a literal Nazi at Disney World. He won't tell you the truth about vaccines, COVID, lockdowns, masks, any of that stuff, because he told you the truth about where the virus came when he got kicked out of polite society for a year, and he never wants to go through that again. So he will never tell you the truth about Ukraine.
I don't know. His show last night, I thought he was sort of getting, trying to walk down the middle a little bit. And he certainly, a forbidden topic presently is the President of the United States mental status or cognitive status or neurological status. Any of those topics are forbidden, and it's obviously there's something going on, but he addressed it. I thought that was pretty courageous.
Great. I say good for him. I'm not saying he doesn't do good work. I'm saying he'll never tell you the truth about Ukraine, and he'll never tell you the truth about vaccines or COVID. Those are third rail topics, and he knows he couldn't cross them, and he didn't. But I will tell you the truth about Ukraine, which I just did. This is another money transfer. There was another, by the way, they had a peace agreement worked out in March of 2022, right after the war started. They had it worked out. It was all, I mean, their documents are there. You can see them. What did they do? Boris Johnson flew to Ukraine, and he told, and by the way, Zelensky is just a puppet, right? He knows exactly, if he actually did a peace agreement, that he would be killed, right? They would Muammar Gaddafi him. That's exact. As soon as he's not useful, they'll kill. And they would have the Nazis who threatened to do it. They said, if you do a peace agreement, we'll hang you from a tree in town square. That's what they told him.
And then Boris Johnson, who was outed in that interview, he freaked out, called Tucker all kinds of names, but at no point did he say, "I never did that." He did not deny it in all his things. But I want to go back to 2017 when they overthrew that, what you call, democratically elected president. I remember that, and of course, the only thing I had was what I saw on television at the time, and now I know to be skeptical of everything I see on TV. But what I remember was interviews with lots of Ukrainians going, we didn't understand what a puppet this man was. We also didn't understand that he was draining our treasury. He had all these riches. Remember, they gave tours of the house he was in, with all these riches and gold and things. And that was all then blamed on Russia. What about that?
I don't know about that, but I do know that the CIA got in bed with Nazis and overthrew their democratically elected government in 2014. I do know there were two peace agreements called the Minsk Accords that Ukraine violated on purpose, and that Angela Merkel admitted that they didn't ever wanted to follow those peace accords, that they just wanted more time to build up the Ukraine military. So this is an economic war against Russia. And this has been, by the way, to do this has been warned against by people from Henry Kissinger to Noam Chomsky. So from all sides of the political spectrum have warned the leaders of the United States and the West not to do this. Why? Because it would push Russia closer with China. And that's the one thing they didn't. Yeah. But the bigger thing that they feared was Russia getting together with Germany. So it was Russians' manpower and their natural resources combining with Germany's engineering and industrial power, and they always feared that. And that's why they blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, which was blown up by the United States. And so, by the way, the people are telling you they want to fight climate change. They blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, the biggest release of methane gas in the history of the world. And that was sabotage. And everybody knows it. I testified at the UN Security Council to that fact. And now Germany is paying 2-3 times higher the rate for energy than they were before they did that. So we're putting an economic hurt on Europe, and we're putting an economic hurt in the United States, and because of money printing, because of inflation, so we can fund these wars. But guess what's happening to Russia? Russia's economy is better than it was before the war. They're closer together with China, and now there's economic power centers being formed. This is the stuff they said Donald Trump was going to trigger in the world, that people would then come together to oppose us, and because they wouldn't respect us. That's exactly what's happening right now with Demented Joe and his neocon warmongers, right? So now we have this thing called BRICS, which is China, Russia, Brazil, South Africa, India. They're all coming together. And now what underpins America's economy, people don't realize this, it's called the petrodollar. When Nixon took us off the gold standard in the 70s, they then replaced that with the petrodollar. What is that, Jimmy? That is a promise from Saudi Arabia that they would only sell oil in U.S. dollars. So what does that mean? So that means the rest of the world has to keep a reserve currency of U.S. dollars so they can now trade and get oil. But they've broken that since we did this Ukraine war. Now Saudi Arabia is starting to sell oil in other denominations, in Chinese denominations, and Indian denominations. So that's going away. And once the petrodollar goes away, we can't be a money printing machine anymore. And once we're not the reserve currency of the world, that is going to crash our economy like you can't believe. And that's happening under Joe Biden and the neocon warmongers, that they said that's the kind of stuff that would happen under Donald Trump. And all I can say about Donald Trump is he was the only president of my lifetime that didn't start a war.
And so where are we going, and what needs to be done? What's your sort of assessment? You mentioned before the break that there are these alternative media outlets springing up. There are, parallel economies springing up. But how do we find our way out of all this?
So I think the truckers in Canada laid a template for it, right? So, of course, they're going to call you a Nazi and a white supremacist. You know, when I saw the first videos of the trucker protests in Canada about the forced mandates and the things that went around that, which was vaccine passports and all that stuff, I saw white truckers and black truckers and native truckers and Indian truckers with the beards and the thing. And when I saw that, I was like, white supremacists. And so the most peaceful protesters you ever saw, by the way, the truckers were vaccinated at a higher rate than the general population in Canada. They weren't protesting vaccines or medicine. They were protesting bullshit authoritarianism, and they were right. And so that's what we need. We need, there's a story that Henry Kissinger tells about the war protesters lining up around the White House, and they had school buses behind the fences, and Nixon turns to Henry, and that was so in case they broke through the fences, they would have something to stop them a little bit. And Nixon turned to Henry Kissinger and said, Henry, I'm afraid if they break through the fence, they're going to come for us. And that's exactly where we want them. We want them to be afraid of us. And this January 6th insurrection, which was instigated by the FBI plants, they had more. I did a thing called Force the Vote, which was to get the Democratic squad. Remember how Matt Gaetz could extract things from McCarthy when he wanted their vote for speaker? Well, because it's such a tight margin. Well, in 2021, same thing for the Democrats and the squad, AOC, Jamal Bowman, all those people, they ran on opposing Nancy Pelosi and getting a vote for Medicare for all on the floor. And so we've wanted this for over a generation, 2 generations on the left. Nancy Pelosi ran on getting a vote on Medicare for all in the 90s. So this was the perfect opportunity. They had 8 votes in the squad. She needed all 8 of them to become elected. So if they voted as a block, they could extract something like Matt Gaetz extracted from. So we think it was called Force the Vote. So we did a rally at the Capitol in January, almost right before, same time they did January 6th. There were more cops and there was National Guard there for our healthcare rally than was at there for the thousands and thousands of people that they knew were showing up to protest that election. So this was all, again, this was so they can. They're not just doing this in America, Dr. Drew, but I mean criminalizing anybody who stands up against the establishment. They did it in Pakistan, right? So the most popular politician in Pakistan in decades, they just criminalized because he stood up against the NATO war machine and he said, never again, we're going to be a peaceful country, and they immediately criminalized him. Now, they did the same thing in Brazil. If you remember, Lula was the big lefty, and then they put him in prison, and they thought the center-right guy was going to win. But son of a gun, Bolsonaro won, who's the Trump equivalent in Brazil, and they screwed up. So they had to let Lula back out of prison because they knew he was the only one who could beat Bolsonaro. He did beat him, and then they immediately criminalized Bolsonaro, and so now Bolsonaro can't run for president. They're doing the same thing in the United States. It's an international billionaire class. That's what they're using, the RICO statute, which everybody was okay with when they invented them in the 70s, because they said they were only going to be used to go after the mafia. Well, now they're using them to go after their political opponents and Donald Trump. If the establishment, and they also, it doesn't matter if you're powerful like Donald Trump, if you don't have any power, like the people who are protesting the expansion of the police state in the United States called Stop Cop City in Atlanta, they use the exact same RICO statute, and they use the exact same grand jury to prosecute Donald Trump as they're used to indict the Stop Cop City protesters. And when I had Cornel West on my show, I told him, I go, do you see the game they're playing now? And he pretended he didn't see the game he was being played now, because he didn't want to get kicked out of polite liberal society and say that, yeah, it's dishonest what they're doing and we need to stand up for everybody. He would stand up for Stop Cop City, but he wouldn't stand up for Donald Trump, because believe me, if they're going to do it to Donald Trump, they'll do it to anybody who stands up and whoever is a threat to the establishment. If Cornel West ever had a spine and integrity enough to stand up to the establishment in a way that would hurt them, they would criminalize him. If Bernie Sanders had a spine and stood up to the establishment, they would criminalize him. If I stood up, they would criminalize me. They do the same thing to you. So anybody who stands up, they're going to call you a criminal, which is why they got rid of habeas corpus. Look what they're doing to Julian Assange. Julian Assange is not in prison because he's lied. Julian Assange is because he revealed their war crimes. That's why he's in prison. That's why Edward Snowden is stuck in Russia. Not because they lied, but because they told the truth the establishment doesn't want to hear. And that's why they hate Donald Trump, because he accidentally tells truths that the president of the United States isn't supposed to tell.
And so what again, those are the facts as you see it. What are the ways out? Is it just about
the only way out
continuing
is like,
to...
The only way out is what Christian Smalls set a template for this He was the organizer of a union, the first union for Amazon on Staten Island. What is, Staten Island's full of a bunch of Trump voters. He's a black guy who organized Trump voters to oppose the oligarchy at Staten Island, and he won. He came left, right, coming together to realize they have more in common that divides us, and we have a common enemy, and that is the establishment oligarchy donor class. And so the truckers and now farmers, right? So now farmers all over Europe are going to their So if the farmers and truckers in the United States decided to shut capitalism down, that's the only thing that that's going to save this country, by the way. So we need a real revolution, something like that. People going there, scaring the hell out of the ruling class, maybe even overthrowing them. I think that's exactly what we need. They definitely need to shut down capitalism.
So slow down. So what I think when you say oligarchs, people get a little turned off by that. It sounds too shadowy. It sounds too 007. It sounds too far from our everyday experience. And yet you can certainly just look at Twitter, look at television, look at anything, and you see an ensconced elite. And everyone knows there's an ossified elite in power in universities, in businesses, in regulatory systems, and in all these organizations you've been pointing at, including the government. Isn't that the real enemy, this sort of stock elite, and that's what needs to be kind of turned over?
That's exactly what I'm referring to. I'm talking about the billionaire class that owns the media. There's only a handful of maybe 15 billionaires that run all the media in this country. There's only 6 media companies. It's just like, you remember when Trump wanted to go, and Bolton wanted to go into Venezuela and get their oil? Trump even brags. He goes, we would have had that oil. And, I found out that Venezuela has more oil than Saudi Arabia. When I found that out, I knew it was just a matter of time before we tried to bring some democracy to their people. And so the reason why that happened was because the oligarchs, meaning the billionaires who run the real government and pull the strings, the Koch brothers had built the oil refill. So that's heavy crude in Venezuela. That's not the sweet crude that comes from places like Saudi Arabia. That's the heavy crude. So it needs extra refining. So they had built these special refineries, and I think it was in Louisiana, to refine this heavy crude from Venezuela. Well, Venezuela knew that they needed that, so they upped the price, and they got pissed off. They didn't want to pay that price, so they was like, "Hey, we're just going to overthrow your government. We're going to criminalize you. We're going to prop up Juan Guaido, which is that puppet of." And so that's how things work. So that's what I'm talking about. So there's a handful of millionaires and billionaires, and I talked about it when I had you on my show yesterday. That I can't say anything on my show on YouTube that contradicts what Bill Gates wants me to say. A guy who never graduated college, by the way, but every news organization asks him his opinion on farming and asks him his opinion on vaccines and medicine and healthcare. Guy never finished college. Why is that? Because he's got a lot of money and he pulls the strings. And why can't I contradict Bill Gates? Because I'm not allowed to contradict the WHO on YouTube. Well, what does that have to do with each other, Jimmy? Well, the former head of the WHO, I have on video saying we have to go around the world begging for money because that's a private organization that isn't elected, that's run on donations. And so whoever donates to them, they have to then do their bidding. That's a direct quote from the former head of the WHO. Well, the number one donor to the WHO turns out to be Bill Gates. And he does it through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Gavi, which is another pro-vaccine NGO that he set up. So whatever he says, I can't contradict on YouTube. That's the oligarchy I'm talking about. That's the kind of control. They control the media. They control the narrative, and that's why they're so. Look what they did to ivermectin. Ivermectin, which was a Nobel Prize-winning human medicine. It's on the WHO list of essential medicines. It's been prescribed billions of times, saved billions of lives. But they made people think it was poison, and you were some kind of a redneck anti-science person if you advocated trying it. That's the power of that propaganda that's owned by that donor class, the billionaire class, the oligarchy. That's what I'm talking about.
But you mentioned the revolt against them. What does that look like? The
revolt, it starts with getting your information from other places in corporate media. You go to your Rumble channel, you go to mine Rumble, you go to anybody who's on. I'm advocating Rumble, Glenn Greenwald, and you have to start. If you can't, you got to get the information. So if you don't have the true information, you don't know really what's happening. And when people get their information. So that's step one.
So that's good. So it's a place to start. So it's go to a free outlet of expression and listen to lots of different ideas. Maybe follow Schallenberger, follow Taibbi, follow Barry Weiss. These are all Glenn Greenwald. These are all excellent sources of information. Schallenberger, I've met and talked to. Guy's a brilliant dude. These are real people, really thoughtful people. Those three for sure, I can vouch for. And then just the fact that we have the opportunity to come up with these, I could just call them parallel economies. I don't know what else to call them. Parallel medias, parallel digital. So digital. I guess what I'm wondering is, one of the things I jotted down when you were talking at the very beginning, you talked about how the lying has always been in place. Is it the fact that we have, is the digital revolution really the new Gutenberg Bible, and that's the only reason we are exposing the lies, as people are able to share information on such a rapid and massive scale now that lies can no longer be perpetrated without somebody exposing them?
Yes, and that's why they had to shut down WikiLeaks and Julian Assange and make an example of him. So it's more important to have him as an example to anybody else who thinks they're going to tell the truth, because that's what's going to happen to you. And so you're exactly right. So the digital media, they have to control the narrative, which is what the Twitter files revealed. Because if they can't control the narrative and they can't censor and discredit people telling the truth, then they lost control of the narrative, which is all the power they have. And if they lose that, then they have to start disappearing people. And that's a lot harder and it's a lot messier. Not that they don't do it, but it's a lot harder and a lot messier. So they'd rather discredit you like they did to Russell Brand, like they try to do to Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi. And again, anybody, look what they did to you, just for asking honest questions and telling the truth about as you see it from a medical perspective, that you're not allowed to do that. That's called authoritarianism, and our country's run by those kind of psychopaths, these antisocial, violent. Again, we're this latest round of bombing in Iran. I was watching CBS News. It's so amazing. The reporter was talking about how the drone that bombed a base of ours, that was, by the way, they showed the map. We have a base in Syria. We have two permanent military bases in Syria. The news reporter never mentions, hey, that's illegal by international standards. Why are we occupying another country? And it said that drone that was Iran-based or backed was allowed to come in because of another drone that was coming back from a mission in Syria. A mission? Was the mission to bring books to the people of Syria, or was it to bomb and do war in Syria? They never tells you that we're over there doing war, killing people on the regular, and that's why those people are killing us. If we got the hell out of the Middle East, which is what Donald Trump ran on in 2016, which was the first mistake he made that made the donor class hate him, he ran on getting us out of there. And so that's what they can't have. They need imperialism, hegemony, and endless war, because that's a money funneling organ. So the Ukraine war isn't a war. It is a money laundering operation. And that's why they got to get that money. They don't care if they use the 100,000, 200, 300,000 Ukrainians as cannon fodder. It doesn't matter to these people because they are psychopaths. And it's called the banality of evil. And they can do this kind of evil because it fills their pockets with hundreds of billions of dollars. Just imagine how much they sent $113 billion to Ukraine at the snap of the fingers. You know how much money that is? You know, the music industry in the United States, the music industry, every recorded piece of music, you know how much it makes in a year? $12 billion. The entire music industry only makes $12 billion. They sent $113 billion to Ukraine at the snap. That's how much money people have to wrap their brain around that. 1 million seconds is something like 11 days. 1 billion seconds is 31 years. That's the difference in what we're doing. And we're bankrupting. That's just the way all countries end. And now they have the border open because people aren't signing up for the military anymore. Well, that's one of the reasons. And so Dick Durbin gave a speech on the floor of the Senate. I'm not making this up. You can look at the video. And he said we have to allow illegal immigrants into our military because we are not meeting our recruiting goals. Why? Because we have 1,000 military bases around the world that we don't need. And the number one emitter of carbon in the world is the U.S. military. And you're never going to see Greta Thunberg protesting at an opening of another military base, which is how you know she's a psyop working for the establishment.
Jimmy, I promised I would let you go at 3:30. We have passed that deadline. I've got a whole other topic to get into if you can stick around a few minutes. I don't want to muscle you to stay. I mean, if you need to go, I totally understand. I see you looking at your staff there.
I would love to.
What's Misha say?
I would love to stay, but I honestly have a doctor's appointment. So
all right, no problem. So
if I didn't have a doctor's appointment, if I didn't have a doctor's appointment, I would certainly stay. This has been really a pleasure. I'll come back anytime.
All right. Well, that's great.
Yeah,
news.
We'll have you back. Emily loves you. She'll be emailing you quickly.
Our booker. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff I wanted to get into on cannabis and vaccines and
I just quit cannabis.
On the medical side. I know. I wanted to get. And you did a whole stand-up hour in cannabis, or a play or something about cannabis, right?
Yes,
Didn't
called
you?
Marijuana-Logues.
Yeah.
I was a part of a play that ran off Broadway for a year called Marijuana-Logues. It was a real part of my identity in my life. I still don't have bad feelings about it, but it's a real interesting story about how I quit. So I'd love to come back on and tell it.
Yeah. All right, there's a lot of different, and the cannabis story is getting more complicated because of the science around cannabis. The potency of what they're producing is like, wow, and creating lots of problems. All right, well, I'll let you go, Jimmy. Thank you so much.
We'll miss you when you're gone. I learned a lot today, Jimmy. Thank you.
You've
appreciate you
radicalized
both.
my wife.
I still don't trust Putin, but I
don't know if that's good.
You're making me lean.
Once she gets radicalized, she gets very stuck. She does not come back. So thank you, Jimmy, for making me lose my wife. So
okay, America's the world's terrorist.
We'll see you soon, my friend. Jimmy Dore, everybody, The Jimmy Dore Show, jimmydore.com, Jimmy_Dore on X. What'd you learn, Susan? What?
I don't know. I was just trying to keep up. He talks very fast.
Yes. Well, you should listen. Did you listen to this show I did with him yesterday?
No, you know what? I didn't, and I wish I had, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to listen and then tell you what you should talk about, because I have a problem with that. But I was worried you wouldn't have anything to talk about today, but clearly you had plenty. So
clearly, I told you not to worry. And there's more where that came from, and we have a lot of stuff.
People in the comments.
I wrote 2 pages.
People in the comments, Drew, they were all like, Drew, stop interrupting him. Let him talk. Just let Jimmy talk, Drew. They were trolling you.
You're laughing because
you barely spoke.
Yeah, because I barely spoke, and that's really interesting.
He's so interesting.
And I wrote 2 pages of. I know I wrote 2 pages of notes of stuff I want to get into with him, and very, very little of it.
We'll have him back.
All right.
We have some openings in March.
That's good. Let me just.
I would have him on once a month. No problem.
All right. Hang on. Somebody has just looking at some of the Rumble rants. If you guys give me a second on that. I saw some of the stuff that Caleb was putting up that you guys were saying. Let's see. Well, they're repeating what Jimmy says, and a lot of Nazi talk, and a lot of terrorist talk, and a lot of support for Jimmy Dore. Boy, he's got some great fans. I'm quickly scrolling back. I just
always have interest in how wars start and how they always start over, oil or a woman or, something.
See,
overthrowing a government, and then
to me, I could never speak the way. Yeah, thank you, Butterfan, because I wasn't even playing devil's advocate. I was just asking things. I'm just curious about that stuff. Because here's why. I mean, to the point I was just going to make, which is I could never speak with that kind of clarity and confidence about anything geopolitical, political generally, because it's just, there's so many players. It's so complicated. There's so many varied motivations people have. And yes, for sure, money is one of them, for sure. But the thing that I've kind of zeroed in on lately is the Mark Chankisi construct, which is that people get convinced that they're doing good. Look at Mao during the Cultural Revolution. And always when social evil is done, it is in the name of good. And if they get to follow some money alongside of it, and that's motivating, of course, that's going to be part of the deal. You look no further than the opioid crisis, everybody. It was a perfect model of this. These professionals decided that the pain was something that needed to be eradicated in America. They built theories and constructs and then had a whole bunch of research to support themselves, that we were under-prescribing opiates, that opiates dealt with all pain, that opiate addiction was essentially no risk. That's literally the literature they were using, to showing that if you took opiates, they essentially took people in the hospital and put them on a bunch of opiates, and then when they came out of the hospital, they didn't have addiction, and said, look, 3 days of opiates and no addiction. And by the way, no defining of what addiction is, no understanding of whether they had any predisposition for addiction or had addiction before they're exposed to the opiates. Nothing of that was discussed. And then we went headlong into these evangelizing, not religious evangelist, topic evangelist. Pain is the 5th vital sign. Anyone that didn't give pain medicines was opiophobic, was interested in patient suffering, was an evil person interested in harming people. That was the first time I went through that, when I was called an evil, bad physician. I was very nearly, thank God I was doing so much good on the addiction side, that the patients understood that they had to go through some discomfort in order to get to where they needed to be to survive. And then my peers kept killing my patients hand over fist by putting them back on opiates, not overdosing. The folklore in retrospect would be, well, they went back and took their usual dose. And of course, that was too much for them because they were no longer tolerant. No, that is not what happened. They were giving small amounts, but they were also given benzodiazepines because my patients are drug addicts. They know what to ask for. And that was what suppressed their respirations. And maybe they took a little too much. Addicts tend to do that. And that was the end of that. It happened to hundreds of my patients. And it was because there were physicians who were evangelical in their sense. They have found their life purpose and they were going to do good and take pain away from humans, America forever. And they did untold harm. And then the money came in after that. That was the Sacklers and all the stories you know about how the drug companies were so duplicitous in all this and kept blowing the winds into the sails of what the professionals were already doing. The attorneys started criminalizing doctors for inadequate treatment of pain. The pain evangelists got control of the regulatory system, and so doctors were getting in trouble with their state medical board and the Joint Commission of Hospital Accreditation. They started stepping in and becoming the muscle of the evangelizing professionals. And think how many thousands, well, people are still dying every day on the streets of this city from people that were strung out on oral opiates 10, 15 years ago. Now they've graduated onto heroin and then fentanyl. And untold thousands were killed because of this. And that's how evangelism, that's how good people believing they're doing good do amazing harm. And it is happening right now on a large scale. That's what we have to watch out for. All right, so let me just look at your comments one more time on the Restream before I wrap this thing up. Susan or Caleb, anything in your anything you're thinking about, interested in? That's why we put the schedule up for what's coming up tomorrow. I think we have the one and only. Do you want to take calls, Susie? You want to take some calls?
Sure.
All right, let's do that.
There's a few people on there.
This is Concordia. And as we all put your cartoon up there.
Just a little time lapse, but
yeah.
Come on, Concordia, unmute yourself and come up to the front of Twitter Spaces.
There you see his, you join and then you unmute yourself after you request.
Right.
There you go, Concordia. Hey, what's going on there? We got.
Hey, you guys are pretty awesome. I thank you for what you do. One thing I want to say is that you have been amazing when it comes to health in the modern age. I mean, my parents, in regards to whatever is going on right now, is good. But when you brought Jimmy Dore in, I think that you guys need to take a look back in history about the CRC and
What's that? What's CRC?
The bankers that have been controlling things since 1913 to take control of America, sort of thing. Jimmy Dore. I mean, look, man. Here's what just happened. You'll understand this, Drew. I got really super self-conscious and I couldn't talk. You guys were talking about a whole lot of things going on in present time. What bothers me about a whole lot of people, when it comes to news media or even you guys talking about stuff that's going on, I know that you have a lot of pressures going on in present time, but what you don't often think about is what's been going on previous to that. And I think that has a huge impact on what's going on in present time. So, for instance, I'm sorry. Do you feel like I'm taking over? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We have to kind of make it quick, but I don't disagree with you that we should be looking at history. The problem is, how do you find the details of history that are true and honest? And that is a challenge. That is a challenge. I get that.
It is. one thing that you brought up with Jimmy Dore is how do we do that? And what I would
Mhm.
suggest to you, and it makes me nervous because I don't want it to disappear, but like maybe suggest books that would be informative to people to educate them on
Okay.
what's been going on in the day.
Do you have something in mind? Do you have something?
No, I would ask you to maybe provide that to us because
Okay.
what I've done, I've been a person who's just kind of observed what's going on and not really cared too much about delving into details, but just focusing on patterns. And the
So
patterns
so let
that I
me.
okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
patterns. Oh, I was going to say that the way. I have to give other people a chance to speak, but I will address your thing. The way I think about this of late is how to free your mind from propaganda. How to do. I don't want to. I don't want to be a source of propaganda. I don't want to tell people that they should read X, Y, and Z books unless they have some specific, want to learn something about where I learned something. But I'm reading books about, Caleb, help me. Who was that? We had that neurologist in about 2 weeks ago. He wrote a book like Your Brain Under Attack or the brain. And then also there's a Free Your Mind is a book. These are all, I recommend people learn about how cynical theories, read Cynical Theories. That's a great book to try to see through what's going on now so that you can then make some choices and look back at things and be kind of skeptical about what's going on. Caleb's going to come up with that book. I think it's called Free Your Mind is the one I just been looking at. Cynical Theories is another one. And then the one about from the neurologist, which it's a little heady, but I thought he was very convincing about the brain under attack, both with viruses and medication and propaganda and how to fight against that. So you can make your own assessments. I think
Was it James Corbett or Jordan?
Cynical Theories. There is one. Free Your Mind was the other. Cynical Theories by two British people. One's a physicist, and listen to Mark Chankisi. Listen to his daily, look at his YouTube, and you can understand how cognitive distortions work. I really think that's the work right now. Is you have to, try to see things clearly as best you can, which is really, really, really hard. Highlander, go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'll let you comment there. And Caleb, go ahead and throw the books up if they come along.
Well, thank you, Doctor.
Yes, sir.
Regarding narcotics, it's a mixed blessing for my family. We're allergic, and I go through the VA health system, and I'm lucky. It's very regional. I'm lucky. I got a good set of doctors. In any case, my point being. So the family is allergic to narcotics. The unfortunate part is when we had to put Mom into hospice last Christmas season, we didn't realize it was through her side. So what does she get? And I'll just say Michigan.
Yeah, she'll get
nothing
benzodiazepines.
But narcotics, no monitoring, nothing.
Yeah.
Narcotics. None of us realizing Mom was the source of us being allergic. I'd step back and like to hear from you professionals about that aspect.
So when you say allergic, what specifically you're talking about? Vomiting? Highlander?
Just so nauseous that it's easier to take the pain than it is the nausea.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense at all.
It does. That's not an allergic reaction. A. B. There are medications to block that nausea that are pretty effective. C. They can give benzodiazepines in high doses, so people are sort of asleep. I wish they could give propofol. That'd be the ultimate thing, but of course they can't. And they can mess around with the opiates to try to find something that does not cause as much nausea. Usually they can find something, has to be given by shot, has to be given by other than oral means typically, though even then it can cause nausea, of course. But the really crazy thing though is we're using pretty much only two medications to help people with the end of life. That's opiates and benzodiazepines. And I don't know why, in California, we are able to use more stuff because they do have sort of assisted suicide kinds of practices. It's very hard to get that stuff done. It does seem to me that we should, much to what your Highlander is bringing up here, we should expand the range of what we have available for patients to make death dignified and comfortable. It's part of life. We hide death away. We pretend it doesn't happen. We are mortified of it. It can be done with dignity. It can be done with comfort. And if you are really uncomfortable with opiates, I am too. I worry about that kind of stuff for myself because I when I have surgery, I get dysphoric from the opiates, so I'd rather take the pain myself. That's the way I get too. So I understand what you're talking about. But the sedating medicines, the sleeping medicines, the medicines to cause amnesia can kind of pull up the slack a little bit.
I like morphine.
I know you're lucky that you have that kind of genetics where it's. So, all right. Thank you guys for your questions. I've got to kind of wrap things up here. It's been a very interesting day, Jimmy Dore.
I had Demerol, right, when I had the
that was not good for you.
When I had my triplets, I was in so much pain, and I took too much, and then I almost died.
Yeah,
I can't remember, Drew.
Because it didn't work. Didn't work.
I feel like back in 2000, whenever I was going through the hospital and stuff, there was a name of something that was a non-opioid pain medication that you had mentioned. Toradol. Is that what you're talking about? Okay, I was getting that mixed up with tramadol, and tramadol is, I think,
for some
opioid.
of us, tramadol is an opioid, weak opiate though. But Toradol, for those of us that don't like opiates, Toradol remarkably effective for me. In fact, it caught my attention so profoundly. I thought, wow, I didn't know Toradol was this effective. Not for everybody, but it can be very effective for some people. Our friend that just had a big chest surgery couldn't tolerate the opiates, and Toradol took away chest surgery pain. So that was...
How's he doing?
Wow. He went home. He's going home.
He's going home already?
Yeah. Yep. Big deal.
Oh, hallelujah.
Nice.
Yeah. So in any event, let's put the schedule up for the week. We have Alex Berenson, the one and only, coming in here tomorrow. And then we have Zuby on Thursday, which will be great. I can't wait to talk to him. Rob Henderson, the new book is called Troubled. Tess Laurie, Brett Weinstein, Dave Rubin. Look at March. Very big week coming up, or very big month coming up, frankly. And we had to reschedule Kelly Victory, but she is coming back with us soon enough. And we're going to be away, if you notice that schedule, next Tuesday. We did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week, and we'll be Wednesday, Thursday next week. Tomorrow is Alex Berenson at the usual time. And if there's nothing else, Caleb, we will see everyone then.
Ta-ta.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.